2021 MLS season is officially underway for Inter Miami. Not necessarily on a good note, though. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Miami Total Football Radio, or as we know that I like to call it in Spanish, Miami Total Football Radio. I am your co-host, Franco Panizo, on this week's podcast, and with me is El Primo, Steve Brenner. Steve, how you doing? We're coming a couple days away, or a couple days from the season opener, so now you've had a couple of days to reflect. What'd you think of the whole experience and the game, and how are you doing, of course, most importantly?
I'm good, thank you very much, mate. It was an interesting experience. It was a good experience. I liked being back at a stadium with fans. I was driving into the stadium and listening to reports about the European Super League and the chaos and crisis in soccer and everything. And then I was just looked and I saw, dads with their kids walking to the stadium and people generally really happy to go and see a match and be involved in everything. And it kind of, brought it home that, it's all about, it's a cliche, it's all about the fans, but, it was so good. We both covered games last season when it was, behind closed doors, and even when they had 200, 300 people in, it was so much better. So to see 8,000 there was great. The result, maybe not so much, as we're sure going to get into, but the occasion and everything was awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, the fans brought an added element that, like you said, was missing last year. Even during the pregame tailgates and the pregame festivities, I was able to hang out with some of the supporters and interview and talk, and, it just was a completely different vibe, and it actually felt a lot more like a professional sports game. Now, like you said, there were only about 8,000 fans in attendance because of seating limitations still due to COVID regulations. But imagine that place when it gets to 16,000 plus like they want to beginning May 29th. It's going to be incredible because the atmosphere with 8,000 felt night and day different than last year when, even when there was a couple of thousand fans in the stadium last year, it still didn't have the feeling that, at least from my opinion, that we felt at Drive Pink Stadium on Sunday. If you're listening to this for the first time, or if you're a regular listener, we always say this before we start. Please give us a follow on all our social media channels, be it YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. It all helps us to provide more of this type of content on a regular basis, especially during the thick of an MLS season. Now, we're going to talk about this weekend's game. We're going to talk about all the latest news regarding the Matuidi Gate situation and Matias Pellegrini. So, Steve, let's get to it. Inter Miami started the 2021 season on Sunday with a game in the middle of the afternoon in sunny South Florida. A beautiful day, a gorgeous day, but the result was not as shiny. Inter Miami suffers a come-from-behind loss, a 3-2 defeat to the LA Galaxy. Chicharito with 2 goals. Javier Chicharito Hernandez, if you want to hear my Spanish pronunciation. He got 2 goals in the game, and Sasha Kljestan scored the winner in the 81st minute. Goals for Inter Miami came from Robbie Robinson and Gonzalo Higuain on either side, or on both sides of halftime. So Inter Miami came out against the LA Galaxy in a 4-2-3-1 formation, and it was the projected starting lineup that we expected. John McCarthy in goal, Calvin Leardam at right back, Nicolas Figal at right center back, Leandro Gonzalez Pires at left center back, Joevin Jones at left back. You had your defensive midfielder in Gregori, Blaise Matuidi playing next to him, but a little bit more advanced, Lewis Morgan on the right wing, Rodolfo Pizarro at the 10, Robbie Robinson on the left flank, and Gonzalo Higuain, who was given the captain's armband, up top. Steve, initial thoughts on the game, your initial analysis or takeaways?
Look, I think that Inter Miami were decent in the first half. They were creating, a few chances. I don't think, LA Galaxy really were in the game too much in the opening stage. I like the look of Vasquez for Galaxy. I thought he looked decent, but, we were sat next to each other, weren't we? Gregore started well. You were going crazy over Figal. What a player. I thought the fullbacks were doing pretty well. Robbie Robinson, it was improved. Matuidi was just sort of, filtering in and out. But, Higuain wasn't really on the ball. Lewis Morgan was quiet. I spoke to someone who basically said that Lewis he was pretty tired. As I'm sure we'll allude to later on. Fitness was always going to be a key, and I think he particularly suffered. I know you said it was lovely day. It was really really hot as well. I mean, it's okay for us and the guys in the stands jumping up, having a couple of beers and doing whatever, and we're in a beautifully air-conditioned press box. But I wouldn't want to be running around for 90 minutes. So that's where I think ultimately the LA Galaxy, who played five warm-up games, Phil Neville, Nostradamus Phil, basically predicted that that would happen. That they were more match fit than Miami, and I think in the end, unfortunately, it told. But I think going forward, they look fine. I just think as the game wore on, tiredness crept in, and defensively they began to crumble a bit as they did last year. It was a microcosm pretty much of every game last season. Look good, potentially going to score a few goals, but then would let a few in as well. So things to work on, but some improvements as well. I think, like you say, I think Robert Robertson looked pretty lively.
My analysis of the game and the day is completely different than yours because, listen, I will take 90 and humid over rainy or cold any day of the week. And look, I fully agree with you, though, that it was, pretty hot. It was a season opener, so I dressed up a little bit more than I normally do. And maybe I might stick with that going forward, but I wore a red blazer with a button-up shirt and dress pants with dress shoes.
No, but you weren't running around in not for
No, and look, hold on.
Blazer, though, were you?
Hold on. And I was out there hanging out with the fans, like I said, in the tailgate, in the sun, and I was hot and sweating. Yeah. And definitely, man, I need some water. Thankfully, some nice fans that I actually did an interview for the Miami Total Football's YouTube page. They gave me a water bottle. I don't know if they saw that I was struggling or what it was, but they were kind enough to offer me a water bottle. So yeah, look, it was hot. And fitness, if we're focusing on the game now, the fitness was talked about by Phil Neville as something that he had to manage because they, and when I say they, Inter Miami, were not heading into this one at full fitness for all the reasons we've talked about on previous podcasts, most notably that they just had interrupted preseason preparations. We'll dissect it a little bit more in a little bit because I think it's worth noting that Phil Neville said that how he and how LA Galaxy coach Greg Vanney managed the game in terms of their substitutions would have a big influence on the game. And then Phil Neville doesn't go and make substitutions until the 72nd minute or the 71st minute. So we'll talk about that. But for me, I thought Inter Miami played well in the first half on the balance of things. They didn't have much possession and they didn't high press. Now, where they did do a good job of was in closing down the spaces and limiting what the LA Galaxy did when the Galaxy had the ball. And I thought Figal was pretty solid in that first half. I thought Gonzalez Pires was also really solid despite getting a yellow card practically 40 seconds into the match, not even a minute into the game.
Yeah, that didn't help. I don't think that doesn't help at all, and that's a good point.
So that first half was solid from Inter Miami, in my opinion, and especially when they get the goal at the end in stoppage time. Rodolfo Pizarro with a great, perfectly timed through ball to Gonzalo Higuain, and Gonzalo Higuain races forward and unselfishly plays a pass to Robbie Robinson for the easy slotted finish. 1-0 Inter Miami going into the break. Solid first 45 minutes. The second 45 minutes were not so good. LA Galaxy realized what Inter Miami was doing. It adjusted, and then things kind of came apart for Inter Miami, especially once the legs started to go. Because like you mentioned, Lewis Morgan showed signs of fatigue. I thought Jovan Jones started showing signs of fatigue. Certain players had a drop-off in their performance. Blaise Matuidi was another. I thought he had a very good first half, and then the second half, he just kind of faded. Inter Miami at points were very easy to play around. And again, this is something I analyzed for my piece for SBIsoccer.com in my day after piece after I rewatched the game a second time. Inter Miami didn't press in this one. And all we've heard from preseason on was that they were going to be a high-pressing team and a possession-based team. Now, I can understand why they did not press, or why they pressed very rarely in this one. And that's because the legs just aren't there. They don't have the fitness yet. They don't have that foundation. But in that second half, they just became too easy to play through. And the Galaxy just knocked the ball around, and they ended up breaking the defense open. And there were individual mistakes. There were concentration issues, which is something Phil Neville and the team talked about as well. Gonzalo Higuain also mentioned that. But by and large, Inter Miami needed to react a little bit more. They were a little too passive, in my opinion, in how they went about things.
Yeah, I mean, but Phil Neville made the point afterwards that he told the team that just to maybe keep the ball short. Don't keep knocking it long in the second half. Just try and slow the tempo down. Just keep possession. Don't chase the ball all the time. But they kept knocking it long. They kept losing possession. The ball was getting turned over, and then that just creates more work for them. So yes, but could he have made substitutions earlier? I think he was when they went 2-1 up. I think he was kind of in the moment, and you loathe to change it. It's going well. We'll keep as it is, and then eventually it got to the point where Lewis Morgan was having to do a lot of Joevin Jones's work. I think that or whatever side he was on, and he was getting more involved in it. And it wasn't working for him. So yeah, I mean it was just one of those games where they just run out of steam. But I think if they could have just slowed the tempo down as he wanted, maybe that would have worked. But you can't take away anything from Chicharito. Great, brilliant first goal, superb run, brilliant finish. The second goal was just poor defending. John McCarthy probably could have done better. And the third one, it didn't really clear the lines either. So it's just defensive frailties, sort of did for them in the end.
So again, for me, I put it more on defensive issues. I mean, I know you just gave credit to Chicharito on the first goal, and it was good movement for him. It's a typical fox in the box type of style of play that he has made his name off of. But even on that play, Leandro Gonzalez Pires, who again I thought had a very solid first half, early yellow card notwithstanding, loses him completely. He knows he's coming. He checks his shoulder more than once. I think it might have been even twice or thrice. And yet he still allows Chicharito to get in front of him and push the ball home or fire the ball home. And Gonzalez Pires is normally known for being aggressive.
Oh man, it was a brilliant run. If you watch it again, he senses the danger. He done a diagonal run. His little touch past him, and
No, I'm not gonna just give that all to Chicharito.
He is a world-class striker.
World-class striker. He was a world-class striker. He's playing in.
He is, man. He is.
He's far from what he used to be.
Oh come on! But fair enough. But at this level, players like that, and you'll see it with Higuain as well. Whoever. Those guys that have come from playing in top European clubs, they are a level above, and his finishing and his presence, definitely in that second half, was a level above for sure.
Gonzalez Pires should have attacked that ball. If he attacks that ball, Chicharito doesn't get in front of him.
Watch the run and watch the turn.
The run is fine. I give Chicharito credit for scoring the goal, but Gonzalez Pires that goal could have been avoided if Gonzalez Pires doesn't ball watch. Or if he attacks the ball when it's coming towards him and doesn't wait for it to come to him, Chicharito doesn't pounce in front of him and fire it home. That goal does not happen. And then you look at the second goal, John McCarthy spills across that probably shouldn't even have come in the first place. And that one, I might put a little more on Robbie Robinson, who a lot of people gave a lot of credit and plaudits to, and I agree he had a good game in the attack. Again, the defensive part is what he still said he's working on, and I think you saw that in this game because at that point, I think Inter Miami had switched, had made their first change, and Robbie Robinson went on to the right side, Rodolfo Pizarro went on to the left, and Federico Higuain was playing at the 10. And Robbie Robinson doesn't cut off the cross from Victor Vasquez. He doesn't pressure or try to apply pressure on the cross. So Victor Vasquez has all time and day to whip the ball in. It was put into a good spot. Nobody gets a head on it, and then John McCarthy kind of knocks. I don't even know how to describe it because it just kind of clanged off of him and just falls across the goal line, and Chicharito just there and pounces on it and pushes it home. Again, some ball watching there from Joevin Jones.
Yeah, the marking on that goal. It was difficult to see what was actually properly wrong on that goal because the cross came over and everyone just seemed to freeze and there was no marking. And then McCarthy just sort of half saved it. It was scrappy and a poor one.
I think McCarthy saw it late, and so to be fair to him, I think he saw it late. But you still can't just have it clang off your arm as the goalkeeper and just leave it across the face of the goal. You need to punch that clear, punch it over the crossbar, do what you need to do, but you can't just leave it there. I said this in the video after the game that I did for Miami Total Football's YouTube page. Chicharito could have just practically blown it in, just gone with a gust of wind or a gust of his breath and pushed that ball. And that's how easy that goal was for him. And for me, the breakdowns there were on Robbie Robinson not closing Victor Vasquez, Nicolas Figal ball watching because he doesn't challenge his mark. So then Gonzalez Pires, who was kind of marking Chicharito, comes over to try to challenge for the ball. It goes over all their heads, clangs off of John McCarthy, and then Jovan Jones, who should have picked up Chicharito because he's not marking anybody, doesn't do that, and Chicharito taps it home from close range, and the game is at 2-2 at that point. And then like we said before, they go and get a third one in the 81st minute,
which was sloppy. Which again was sloppy. They just didn't deal with the ball. They didn't clear their lines properly, and it was actually a great finish when I watched the replay.
So, but why did it? No, the finish was great. Question's finish was superb. The ball curled around from the outside of the goal frame and kissed the inside part of the post and goes in. But yes, the team in general did not clear their lines. But why did they not clear their lines? That's the why is the important part. And for me, when I watched back the game that night when I got home, that last goal, the game-winning goal, I put that on Phil Neville. Because Jovan Jones, again, to me, had been showing signs of fatigue well before then. And on that play, it starts off of a Nicolas Figal switch. He tries to make a cross-field diagonal ball, aerial ball to Jovan Jones. Jovan Jones tries to track it. He gets near the sideline and heads it forward. He can only manage to head it to like an empty space where Rodolfo Pizarro and I think it was O'Neal Fisher, the Galaxy right back. They're both there. It's a 50-50 ball. O'Neal Fisher gets to it first. He races forward. Pizarro kind of lets up, which was not the greatest visual if you're an Inter Miami fan. And Jovan Jones, who was behind the play, tries as hard as he can, but you can just see he just doesn't have the legs. Like he does that motion when you see a player running and then they like push their head down like they're trying to dig really deep, but he never gets there. So Fisher just has the whole flank open and he's able to whip in the cross and it ends up falling to Sasha Question. Blaise Matuidi gets a touch on it but can't clear it out. It falls to Sasha Question and he scores. He scores the goal. Phil Neville should have made substitutions before the game. During that second half, before he did. And should have made more of them because he took too long, in my opinion. And
yeah, I mean, he said that was what he was going to do. I guess he assessed the state of the game and thought, oh, maybe I could just hang on. It's it's difficult, isn't it? Do you stick or do you twist? He doesn't have too many options off the bench, but yeah, he'll probably look at that and think, yeah, maybe I could have changed it a little bit earlier, but they were kind of winning and they were drawing and they came back and the game was in the balance, wasn't it? It's not as if they were getting beaten 5 or 6-0. It was very much in the balance and yeah.
But that's not the only time to make substitutions, man. Like he said it before the game. He said it on Thursday last week. I'm probably gonna have to start making substitutions from halftime on. Something you noted when we did last week's show because you were like, it's not normal when coaches come out and say something like that. But because of the situation that we've talked about for weeks and their fitness issues, he acknowledged he had to make subs. And he even said the phrase, and I'm not quoting it word for word here, but I'm paraphrasing, but he said how me and Greg Vanney manage the game in terms of substitutions will probably have a big influence on the match. And that's exactly what happened because if you look at the goals that the Galaxy scored in that second half, they scored 3. One of them was assisted by a substitute, and the game winner was scored by a substitute. Why did Phil Neville not make the substitutions? And I know he explained saying, the game was, like you just mentioned, was in the balance, and they scored, and they were up, and they were about to make substitutions when it was 1-1. Then they got the penalty kick that Gonzalo Higuain pushes home for the 2-1 lead, and that kind of maybe changed his opinion. But if you know that your players are not at ideal fitness and their tanks are running low, you need to make changes. You knew you had to make changes. So, I'm not going to put it all on him because he was, dealt a rough hand given how preseason went out. But he should have definitely managed this game and this second half better than he did.
Yeah, maybe he'll look at reflection and think that maybe he got caught up in the moment. Where I was watching him when they scored the opening goal, he was going crazy on the sidelines. So, a learning process for everyone.
Who impressed you? Who impressed you in this game? Obviously, it might be tough given the way that second half played out, because even the players that I thought had really good first half maybe didn't have great second halves, but like Figal, the second half was completely different than the first half. Gonzalez Pires, same thing. But who did you like in this one for Inter Miami?
Yeah, like you say, I thought Figal did okay. I thought the fullbacks looked okay to begin with, and they kind of faded. I thought Gregore looked decent. Like quite a good fall for Matuidi, but they're quite similar players, aren't they? So it's going to be interesting to see how they can dovetail. Lewis Morgan was pretty quiet, and then Robbie Robinson sort of worked hard. Pleased that he got his goal. I've gone through the whole team other than John McCarthy, who probably did okay. But maybe Gregore, I think the first sort of 30 minutes, I think he looked decent. But again, this is a guy that hasn't really, like the others, he just hasn't played.
So that's your man in the match, Gregore?
Oh, Pizarro as well. We're going to get to Pizarro. I thought Pizarro did okay. Maybe I'm setting the bar too high. I just expect more from him. I just think, in the final third, I think he's nice touches, and he's obviously great on the ball. He gets around a bit, but he also wilted. I think he wasn't really tracking back for the third goal. I don't know. I just maybe just expect a bit more from him. I know you're going to say that he's a new Pele or something like that, but I don't know. The jury's still out of it.
Wait. Who's your best player? Who was your man of the match for Inter Miami?
It's a good question. I'd give it to Robbie Robinson.
Okay, you give it to Robbie Robinson.
Energetic display with a goal.
I liked him better in this one than I did in the last preseason scrimmage that we got.
I liked him better in this one than I did in the opening game last season against LAFC, where he looked pretty raw. Here he looked a bit better, and was playing in a slightly different role as well, wasn't he? He was moving into space, and yeah. And Neville talked him up preseason, isn't he? So he must like him.
He was good in transition when he had space and he could go at defenders one-on-one. I liked what he did there. Showed some willingness to go at the Galaxy defenders and try to make things happen. Thought his decision-making could have been a little bit better in terms of when to combine with Higuain or when to look for Higuain, and then when to shoot. But a solid performance from him and a solid performance from Higuain and Pizarro, in my opinion. I thought they were the three best players for Inter Miami. Those three in the attack showed a lot of good things. Now, that doesn't mean they had flawless games. Again, Robinson, I think, is partially to blame for that second Chicharito goal. I also think Higuain needed to get a little more involved in those opening 20, 30 minutes. Again, Miami did not have much possession. They lost the possession battle in this one by a wide margin, so that hurts or that impacts his ability to influence the game. He also had a couple of rough touches when he did get the ball, so some things to clean up there on his end. But for me, Rodolfo Pizarro, and yes, I acknowledge that he did kind of let up there on that last goal that Inter Miami gave up, still think he was the best player. I still think he showed a willingness to try to make things happen on a regular basis. And if you look at the two goals they scored, he plays the quality through ball to Higuain to help set up the first, and then he draws the penalty kick that Higuain puts away in the second half to make it 2-1 in Inter Miami's favor. So Pizarro, again, like everybody else, wasn't perfect, but for my money, he was still cut above everyone else. He thought he was sharp.
Yeah, he looked sharp. Yeah, for periods, for patches.
I know you don't love Pizarro. I know you have your Pizarro.
I just want more. I just want to see more. I think there's a good player in there for sure. I just want to see more of it. I want to see him dominate.
I love that saying. I'm glad you brought it back this season. There's a good player in there. I don't think he's a 10. If you're expecting him to be a 10 and play that way, I don't think he's ever gonna do that for you, because he's not a 10. He has good technical abilities, and he can help unlock a defense on occasion, but he's not a pure number 10. He's not going to break open defenses like Diego Valeri at the Portland Timbers or like Emmanuel Reynoso of Minnesota United. He's not that type of player. He's just not going to be that type of regular facilitator or regular creator. Sorry. He's more of a facilitator. So I think if you're expecting him to be that maybe more old school traditional number 10 where everything goes through him and he breaks lines and he plays that final pass on a regular basis, I think you're going to regularly be disappointed, Steve.
Well, let's see what Phil Neville thinks or tries to do with him. I I guess maybe just because of the fact he's a DP, and you just expect these guys to turn it on and turn it off like a tap. So let's see how he goes on Saturday night.
Hey, he still got an assist and set up a penalty kick in this one, so it's not a bad haul for your number 10, even if he's not a number 10. Like, now let's quickly switch gears to this weekend's game. Inter Miami on Saturday plays the Philadelphia Union on the road at Subaru Park, the site of Gonzalo Higuain's MLS debut. Now, if you remember,
Stormy night. What a stormy night that was.
if you remember clearly, it was a stormy night. Higuain maybe was a bit unlucky not to get on the scoreboard on a few different occasions. Hit the post on one overhead kick that he attempted, but he also had that penalty kick that he missed high and wide in the second half. And then the Philadelphia Union players kind of euphorically celebrated his miss, and he got in their faces, and they had a whole little skirmish or exchange there.
It kicked off.
Do you think any of that will remain? Do you think he'll head into this game with that in the back of his mind, or that they'll think about any of that? What do you think?
Oh, I mean, you have to ask him, I guess. But it was just the pressure was on, wasn't it? The spotlight was on him. The spotlight is always on him. But I guess he actually admitted when we spoke to him, the other day, didn't it, that he definitely found the first few months or weeks in MLS difficult. He'd struggled to adjust physically to it. It's completely different to playing in Serie A or La Liga or the Premier League. So he's got a few games under his belt now. He's got experience. But he's got a bit of fire in his belly as well, isn't he? Which I like. You've got to have that, especially as a top player, as a supposed top player. You want to have a snarling sort of guy, and I guess Phil Neville will encourage him to be like that, because then the Union defenders will probably thinking, they'd rather see him on the bench than on the team sheet. Put it that way. So it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts. But this is a guy who's played in the World Cup final, by the way. So I was there when he did play in the World Cup final, and he actually famously missed a great chance early on, which my Argentinian handyman will never forgive him for. But that's a different conversation. But he's played at the highest level, so he knows how to handle himself.
Sure, I still think that will be in the back of his mind. I think that he'll have that chip on his shoulder, and he'll be like, you know what? I'm going to get these guys back for that. I don't think he has completely forgotten about it. That's just my opinion, though. I don't know. We have not talked to him this week, and we won't get to before the game, I don't believe. So we won't know, but if he scores, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little added pepper, salt and pepper, in his celebration. Steve, Philadelphia is coming off a 0-0 draw against the reigning MLS Cup champion Columbus Crew. That game was in Columbus. Both teams played close to or their starting lineups, as you would expect for a season opener. Steve, what are the keys to this game for Inter Miami for you?
I think they've got to just make sure that they're just hard to break down. And I think when the ball comes into the box, that they deal with it, because they didn't really deal with it properly the other night. So the chances will come. Maybe he'll look to soak it up. The game is played in the evening. It's not going to be as hot in Philadelphia as it was in South Florida on Sunday, which is another factor for sure. So let's just see what they've learned from the mistakes they made on Sunday.
For me, it's figuring a way to press Philadelphia a little more when they have the ball. Now, they're not going to be able to high press, and they're not going to be able to press for the 90 minutes. They just don't have the legs in them for that, even with one game under their belt. But they need to press at certain points when Philadelphia has the ball in their half. And that's, again, to reiterate, because I don't know if I was able to fully express the thought and my analysis from this last game, Inter Miami made a conscious and deliberate decision. And it's not something Phil Neville said, but I saw it, and this is just my analysis. I saw it when I rewatched the game. They made a conscious and deliberate decision not to press. They preferred to contain, even when the Galaxy got into their half. Very rarely did you see players tight on their marks. They always kept a few yards distance away from the players that they had to keep in front of them. It seemed like they just wanted to keep their defensive shape and structure and try to stay organized. And it worked in the first half. It did not work in the second half. So Jim Curtin is a savvy MLS coach. He will see that on the tape, and he will say, look, if they're going to give us that time and space, we're going to do what the Galaxy did, and we're going to pick them apart. Because at times during that second half, and this might sound harsh, Inter Miami looked like traffic cones. The way that they were just so easily played around. And there's one moment in the 60th minute where Kelvin Leerdam, the right back, presses, and he tries to get tight to his marking, tries to go into a higher position to win the ball, and the Galaxy just smartly use the space they have to play around him in a triangle, and he just frustratingly puts his arms up in the air and is like, well, where's my help? That he just was like, what the heck? Why isn't no one pressing with me? So Inter Miami has to press at least when the ball comes into their half, at least on some occasions. They very rarely did that in the second half, again, and even during the course of the game. And again, I know fitness is an issue, and they have to manage that the best way they can. Phil Neville is a bit hamstrung in that regard, but they just can't just give another team in Major League Soccer all the time and all the space to figure out what they want to do with the ball. I get wanting to be organized and keep defensive shape, but at this level with the team, especially against the teams you're playing that have caliber players, like you mentioned, Chicharito on the Galaxy, they're going to pick you apart. They're going to, if they're playing close to their top level. So Inter Miami has to press. And if you want to see a clear image of what I'm talking about, go on my Twitter handle at Franco Panizo or on SBIsoccer.com and the analysis piece, and you'll see the image. I've taken a few images from the game. I even put in some lines to show.
There's lines. There's everything. It's like VAR all over again. It's brilliant.
There's X's and O's, man. Trying to do a little more diving into the X's and O's for the hardcore fans that want to talk about tactics or want to discuss tactics or want to have more insight into what Inter Miami is doing. So definitely something to check out. Lineup, do you think they go with the same lineup, Steve?
I mean, considering the fitness problems that they've got, maybe he will, mix it up a bit. I know we're going to talk about the game that they played against Miami on Monday night. But that would have mainly been sort of squad players, wouldn't it? So, maybe he will mix it up a little bit. We'll have to wait and see. But doesn't have a lot of options off the bench, does he? What do you think?
I mean, it is tough. It is tough. We haven't spoken to him yet. We will speak to Phil Neville on Thursday, so we'll have a better idea. Then we're recording the show on Tuesday evening, coming out Wednesday. So we won't not have spoken to him until after this goes out. I think we could see the same lineup. I think we could see him actually make substitutions a lot earlier, though, because that team did hold up well in the first half. Defensively, they held up well. And the attack on the counter, they looked the more dangerous team. But then in the second half, like we've said, the things changed, and it didn't work out that well. So I could see the same lineup, but I would expect this time for there to be substitutions made from as early as halftime, if not the 55th, 60th minute mark, because they're not going to be able to hold on again, just like they didn't in this game. They just don't have the legs in them. If that's the biggest lesson Phil Neville can take from that game, make substitutions earlier because your players are not there.
Yeah, I hope we're not talking about the pre-season all season, because it's going to be really, really, really annoying. But anyway, it is what it is, I guess.
I mean, like Lewis Morgan said last week, there's no excuses. There's no excuses. Now, I know Phil Neville after the game said, we're still playing, we're still catching up in that regard. It's not an excuse, it's just a fact. It is just a fact, but you still have to get results, right? So hopefully in this one, for Inter Miami's sake, they can manage it a little bit better and that they can get the result, because Philadelphia is a good team. They are the Supporter Shield reigning holders, so won't be an easy task. Steve, we'll leave it there. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back to talk about other news regarding the team that has nothing to do with Sunday's game, or not directly, but we'll do that after this. Okay, Primo, so there was more news that came out at the tail end of last week and on Sunday at the stadium, and it was in regards to Matuidi Gate. On Friday, MLS wasn't its findings, because they haven't announced that yet, but they gave an update, I guess, with regards to the Matuidi situation and investigation. And they said they have found that Matuidi's compensation was above the TAM threshold in 2020. And what that means, Inter Miami played with 4 designated players last year unofficially, and that's against MLS rules. So Inter Miami broke Major League Soccer's designated player rules last year. Inter Miami is going to be punished. MLS said that in their press release. They will be announcing sanctions as well as concluding the investigation in the short term. Don Garber spoke to us on Sunday at halftime of the Inter Miami LA Galaxy game. He reiterated that, said they have to defend the integrity of the league's rules and the league itself, and it doesn't matter who your owner is or anything of that nature. Sanctions are coming for Inter Miami. He said they would come this week. We've talked about what we think they could be, but now that we have a little bit of an update, we have a little more information. What are your thoughts, Steve? Are you worried for Inter Miami in terms of what could happen to them this week?
Well, I mean, I thought it was brilliant by Don Garber. He came to speak to us. He was, oh wow, it's amazing! What a great stadium, and it's fantastic and fantastic atmosphere. And he's like, yeah, we're definitely going to sanctions on Inter Miami for sure because of the Matuidi thing, and also, yeah, maybe they're not socially distancing behind the goal, but anyway, so he was kind of killing Inter Miami with kindness, really. But they like you said, I think he said the key quote I used for one of my reports was, our rules are sacrosanct. You can't do that. They contravene the rules. Whether or not they gave him a house or they gave him extra things just to ease his move through, we don't really know yet. They said that the details will be announced in due course, as will the punishment. We're speculating as to what the punishment could be. It could be a transfer ban, draft picks, or whatever, but he was pretty adamant that you broke the rules, you're going to have to pay. I think it's pretty simple as that. So it's going to be very interesting to see, what the decision is.
There's a section of fans out there, and mostly on the Inter Miami side, that are worried about what could happen. Then there's fans that are a little more jaded in terms of other teams around the league that say nothing's going to happen to Inter Miami. And if you look at the pregame photos that are out there, Don Garber is hanging out with David Beckham, Jorge Mas, Jose Mas, Chris Henderson. They're all posing for photos together. Based off the photos, it doesn't look like there could be big sanctions or big punishment. But I think that there will be. And talking to Don Garber at halftime just further underlined that belief for me. They're going to get the hammer hit over them pretty hard. We don't know how exactly. Don Garber said there will be transparency in terms of the findings and in terms of the sanctioning when that's announced at some point this week. So we'll see what the ultimate decision is and come back next week and talk about it. But man, I don't think it's good news for Inter Miami. Now, we did ask Don Garber whether Paul McDonough, the former Inter Miami sporting director, was included in the investigation. Because if you remember, when this was initially announced, a couple of reporters, very credible reporters, came out and said that Paul McDonough was not a part of the investigation. Again, those are credible reporters, but I couldn't believe that to be the case. I just couldn't. Unless he pointed the finger and had he gotten himself immunity, I just couldn't see that being the case. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, what you thought.
I mean, no, he was in charge at the time, so he must have been consulted. I mean, that's, we don't know, as you've alluded to, there are reporters that are closer to him than maybe you or I, but I mean, just on the plain facts, just reading between the lines, I mean, the guy was in charge, so his name would have come up some way, and MLS were very keen to stress to us, as they have done to me previously, and as they did in front of all of us on Sunday, that the investigation has been very, very, very thorough, and that is why it's taken so long. And so it would be impossible for them to have not consulted or spoken to Paul McDonough and or Diego Alonso, who were both in charge at the time.
Yeah, and look, Paul McDonough had his hand in so many jars at that moment. He was not only the sporting director, he was also overseeing the business side. He had a lot of influence and a lot of power within the organization at that time. So I do not see how he could not have known about it at all. Whether he was the one that had the extra or gave the extra compensation or not, I don't know. But I can't imagine he did not know. I just can't imagine that. Maybe it was David Beckham. Maybe it was Jorge Mas. There are unfounded rumors. Well, not unfounded. Unconfirmed rumors out there, like you mentioned, about Blaise Matuidi being given a house. We don't know if that's official. Those are just, as of right now, unsubstantiated rumors. But if that is the case and that is what's going, or that's what's being considered as extra compensation, well, then someone broke a rule there, whether it's the owners, whether it was the sporting director, someone there messed up. And I think it's off the books, right? Because MLS cuts the checks. MLS has the salaries somewhere in their league headquarters for the whole league. So I can't imagine that this extra compensation was on the books and they just now realized this. Oh, well, we messed up last year. I think the compensation has to have come off the books. I mean, that's just what I think. Again, not any inside information, but I mean, is that your read into it? Is that what you believe?
Yeah, 100%. That point about MLS, they would know, and definitely, the feeling I've been hearing from Miami or from the Inter Miami camp is that they're worried. They're worried that what they found had gone on in the past, and they're worried about now what the sanctions will be, because they've been found guilty, so they clearly have done something wrong, and as we've said, they've compromised the integrity of the league, they've broken the rules, and they're going to get punished. Simple as that.
Well, along with that news on Friday came the news that Inter Miami bought out Mattias Pellegrini's contract for the year. Now, in layman's terms, and this is going to be a little confusing, bought out means you buy out the contract. That player is no longer one of yours. That's not the case here in MLS, where things are a lot more complex. Pellegrini's contract was bought out for this season. So he's no longer able to play for Inter Miami in 2021. He has been loaned to Fort Lauderdale CF, the USL team. So he can play for them and train with them this season and this year. My understanding, my read on it is Inter Miami is just buying time because most transfer windows across the world are closed right now, if not all of them, maybe aside from MLS. So by keeping him on their books, but not having him eligible to play for the first team, they can still sell him later on this year, maybe as soon as the summer, and try to recover some of their investment into him by selling him for X amount to whoever. But Pellegrini has been hard done by, my opinion, because he now cannot play for MLS. That hurts his development. He can train with the USL team, but the USL team's full of young kids. So, I mean, he's not necessarily a super wily veteran himself, but it's still not what was expected for him. It's going to hurt his development. It's going to hurt his stock, and it's just not a good look for Inter Miami. Obviously, this is something that the current leadership inherited, but just not a good look for Inter Miami.
No, and shame for him as well. He came over from Argentina. He's living in a foreign country. He's a young kid. He had then the pandemic hit and everything was up in the air, and it's very unsettling, especially for a young guy who's probably not lived outside of the country in his life. It's difficult, and now all of a sudden he's been sent to play away from the first team. He's not allowed to play for the first team or the Inter Miami team for the rest of the season. It's probably dented his confidence. It's probably hurt him. It's probably annoyed him. He's still going to get paid. Am I right?
Yes, he'll still get paid.
So that, he hasn't been completely hung out to dry, but he's a victim. And I feel sorry for him because he's a young player just trying to make his way, and they paid a lot of money for him, and it's just it's been a difficult experience. I bet he just wants to go home now and just move on and forget about it. But it's not as easy as that, is it?
Well, so that's the thing. That's the thing for me, because Inter Miami tried to come out and paint this as like, we're doing the best for all parties. But I don't agree with that. Because if they wanted to do the best thing for all parties, they would have just bought him out outright, let him be a free agent, and then he has so much more flexibility to go and pick where his next spot is. Be it in a month or 2 months from now, he has so much more freedom as a free agent to find his next home. But Inter Miami wants to recover some of its investment. That's why they're holding on to him. That's why they didn't buy him out outright. And that now still puts them in a tough spot, because now they have to still come to terms with another team at some point this year to sell him. It's not up to him entirely now. Inter Miami still has to find if they want to, this team hasn't hit our number yet, or this team has hit our number. There's still negotiations Inter Miami has to have to sell him. And it's just not a good look, man. It's just not a good look. Again, not something this current leadership has done. This is something they inherited, but I feel like they could have maybe managed this a little bit better still. And what added salt in the wound, or what just further highlighted this, was Pellegrini's Instagram post on Saturday, or on Sunday afternoon. I don't know if you got to see it before the game, but he posted a picture of
I
him.
saw that. I saw that.
Posted a
Sad.
picture of himself. It looked like in his apartment complex gym, by himself, empty gym, and he was wearing, notably or maybe not notably, an Estudiantes jersey. No mention of Inter Miami, nothing, just him in there. It's kind of sad. It's just like you said. It's just kind of, I don't know, a little emo, for lack of a better phrase, and it just kind of depicts his situation perfectly though, because it's just he deserved better, man. He deserved better from Inter Miami, from MLS, from whatever. I know it's a tough situation for the club to be in. I understand wanting to recover some of their investment. They spent a lot of money on getting him, but I mean, I don't know.
What else could they have done, though? I mean, play devil's advocate. What else could they have done?
Let him go. They're gonna let him go anyway. But you're already doing him rough as it is. Just let him go. Let him be. Let him, figure out his career. He's not going to play for this team again. He didn't even play for Fort Lauderdale over the weekend. Maybe, they said, let's give him a weekend off to process this and deal with this. I don't know. But it still could have been handled slightly better from the team. That's just my opinion. Just my opinion. We'll see what happens with Pellegrini. I think it'll be some time before there's a resolution in that regard. But Steve, let's quickly switch gears to something you brought up a little bit earlier ago. Inter Miami held a scrimmage with Miami FC on Monday, the day after it played its season opener against the LA Galaxy. You have some news and notes on that match?
Yeah, apparently 3-1 to Inter Miami in the end. They were losing 1-0 at half-time to Miami FC, who are still a couple of weeks away from their season openers in the USL. I'm actually unable to know exactly how strong the Inter Miami team. We've kind of assumed that it wouldn't have been complete full of first teamers, would it? Considering they were, they're obviously playing on Saturday night. But at least I think the fringe players would have got a decent run out in a game which we know should have been played a couple of weeks ago. So they're just I guess exploring every angle to try and just make sure to get as many minutes in as many legs as possible.
Yeah, I mean, to me, obviously this caught us kind of by surprise. We didn't know this was happening. All eyes were kind of on Sunday's match against the Galaxy, and then over the last 24 hours, there was this news started popping up and whispers started coming out about a friendly being played against Miami FC. Like you said, it has to have been a case. It has to have been a case of Inter Miami playing its reserves and the substitutes maybe that entered the game on Sunday, because typically the day after a game, for muscle recovery and everything, it's a regeneration day. So can't imagine any of those starters played a single minute in that game. Obviously, that's not information. I don't have that confirmed. I don't know if you do, but I can't imagine any starters from Sunday played a single minute on Monday against Miami FC. I think you would probably get the reserves, maybe some USL players, and of course, the substitutes that maybe went into the game a little bit and only had a few minutes here and there on Sunday. So fitness seems to be the point of that match, seems to be something that they're looking to improve on. That's what I would assume from the outside looking in. Hopefully it helps them, because they need to get to fitness as quick as possible, because clearly it affected them on Sunday. Steve, let's take a quick break. Let's come back for the Q&A and our final thoughts after this.
It was always going to be a case of cat and mouse. They made substitutions and they brought players on that probably had been playing a lot of games in pre-season. We still are playing catch up in that respect, but it's not an excuse. It's just a fact.
Q&A time. Steve, we'll just jump right into it. So the first one comes from Bruno, Tank Evan 21. How long do you believe it will take for the team to become fully match fit? Also, what do you think about our bench? Do we have enough skilled players waiting to actually become difference makers when they come into games? Steve, you can start here.
The plain fact is that LA Galaxy played 5 preseason games against MLS teams Miami played 2 games against USL teams. I think it's going to take them, unfortunately, maybe 2 or 3 weeks to get up to speed. Definitely, as you just mentioned, the backup players had a decent run out on Monday night, and they did great by all things considered. Certainly, what I've just been told. But it's gonna take a little bit of time. I just think it's a shame they didn't get a win on the board on Sunday. That would just give them a bit of confidence, something to build on. They're kind of on the little back foot now. Lost the first game, but let's see how they go on Saturday night. The cooler temperatures could certainly help them for sure. And yeah, with the bench, that's the worry, isn't it? How deep is the squad? Not really. Federico Higuain is probably a good option. You've got Carranza as well, so he has got some options. He has got some options up top. Ryan Shawcross as well could feature at some point over the next few weeks. So it's just a case of managing the squad.
For me, I've said this for weeks now. It's been in all of my preseason coverage of the team. Depth is a question mark, a big question mark for me. Do they have enough depth to really ride out a 34-game regular season? I'm not so sure. In terms of being able to consistently get results with what they have when they need to rotate. But how long it'll take for them to get fit, that is a great question. I don't have the answer to that. I wish I did. I could imagine it takes them anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. That's what I would envision, because preseason normally is 6 weeks. So 3 to 4 weeks, they obviously have some foundation because they've had some preseason, but it's been interrupted. So I could imagine it being anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. But again, I'm not a physical trainer. I don't know the exact details of where each player is physically, but that's where I would imagine more or less is what they're probably looking at roughly. Because fitness is an issue. Next question comes from Fighting Herons. Do you think the lack of possession by Inter Miami will continue going forward, or was it just a tactic used in this match due to lacking fitness or the opponent? I'll start here. I'll reiterate what I said in an earlier segment. I think it was a tactic used to combat their lack of fitness. However, that lack of fitness will probably still be there this week. So will they have the ball? Will they try to press and take more of the ball and have more of the ball? I don't necessarily think so. I think you might see a similar type of more reactive game from Inter Miami where they try to hit a little bit more on the counter as opposed to being the protagonist that they've said they want to be. I think that's just a natural byproduct of the lack of fitness, the lack of legs under them. So we'll see. We'll see how they do against the Philadelphia Union.
I think it depends game to game. I think that's the interesting thing with MLS, isn't it? Is that conditions dictate a lot because they vary so much. I think playing high pressing games in 90-degree heat is different to playing away at Philadelphia on a Saturday night in April. I think it depends on the situation, really.
Yeah, but Phil Neville said during preseason he wants this team to be a possession-based team, and he has to know going into the year that Inter Miami plays in a hot, humid market, so it's going to be hot
all the time. Though they don't play in hot, humid conditions all the time, do they? Only half the matches.
I mean, half the matches, yeah. They're gonna. But if you want to be a possession-based team, you're not a possession-based team half the time. Then you're not going to have a defined identity. So I think he knows that. I think it's just right now they just don't have the fitness to try to go win the ball and try to then keep the ball. I think that it's going to take some time, but I do think eventually they're going to try to be a team that searches for the ball, tries to win the ball, and tries to keep the ball. I think we'll see that when they actually get to their peak fitness levels. Next question comes from Endo. Who do you guys think will captain the team against Philly? Any changes to the starting 11 that was fielded against the Galaxy? Thanks, guys.
Well, he's named 4 captains, isn't he? So maybe someone else is going to get a go at it, I guess. Gonzalez Perez maybe to give him a bit of a boost after what happened. I'm told Ryan Shawcross played pretty well on Monday night. He could get the nod. I can't really see him making too many changes at the back. Can you?
I don't see lineup changes. If there is one change, maybe it's taking Lewis Morgan out. Maybe just because of where he's at with his fitness, and then maybe you give Federico Higuain a start. Possibly, I'd like to see that. I liked what I saw from Federico Higuain, although he missed that glorious opportunity to tie the game at 3-3. near the end of the match, he had a good look. He one-timed the shot, but he just couldn't put it on frame. It was so close, but so far. So I think that could be one change. Could be is the key or the key words, but I think you'll see the same lineup. That's just my opinion. As for who I think will be the captain, like Steve just mentioned, Phil Neville, after we recorded last week's show, announced that he's not going to do things the traditional way. He's going to have 4 Inter Miami captains. And they are Gonzalo Higuain, Blaise Matuidi, Victor Ulloa, and Leandro Gonzalez Pires. And he said that those 4 will rotate the armband over the course of this 2021 season. Gonzalo Higuain had it on Sunday. I think it will be Blaise Matuidi's turn on Saturday. It's just my gut feeling. No inside info there. Last question, Steve, from Eric. Is it fair to say Phil Neville got outcoached in the second half? Seems like we struggled to match substitutions that Greg Vanney made in the second half.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've touched on that. I think there was definitely an element of being sucked into the occasion. Miami weren't getting completely steamrolled. The game was pretty tight on reflection when you look at it. Could he made a changes early? Yeah, maybe. But was he outcoached? I don't think so. I just think he, as I said, I just think that he got a little bit caught up in the moment. I think he tried to stick with what he wanted to do initially. And for whatever reason, in terms of tiredness or fatigue, the heat, everything, it just didn't work. But as I said, I'm repeating myself, but on reflection, the game was pretty tight, wasn't it? There wasn't much in it at all. It could have gone either way. I went against Inter Miami this time. And I think, that everyone will learn from it. I'm not just sitting on the Phil Neville coated fence, but I think, it was just that was just the way it is.
Are you sure? Because I don't know. I always see you on some fences, bro. I feel like I see you there a lot. No, listen. I think outcoached is maybe not the right word in this sense, because there were certain circumstances that you have to take into consideration. For context and the bigger picture, his team is limited physically for reasons outside of his and their control, or mostly outside of his and their control. However, did his lack of experience maybe show here? Did he maybe muck it up by not staying to his initial plan, which was to make substitutions? I think so. I think that is something I wrote. I think that's something that can be said. And I don't think it's been talked about enough. Yes, it's his first game. Yes, he's got many more. He'll learn from it. No one's saying #Nev out. But I think that he did not make the most of that second half, that he could have managed it better.
Yeah, and worth pointing, Greg Vanney obviously is very experienced in MLS.
Yes.
6 years in Toronto. He spent a year at Chivas. I mean,
he knows that he knows the league.
Phil Neville hasn't managed in this league. It is completely alien and different to anything else he's been involved with England women, with anything else. He was in Valencia, he coached at Man United. It's completely different. So, and it's his first managerial job, full time being a manager. So, I'm not making excuses for him. He's a big boy; he can look after himself. But Greg Vanney knows the league. Phil Neville doesn't know the league. That's as pure as simple as that, really.
I think that is very notable because that's I was on Onside Radio last Friday and I was asked by Big O, shout out to Big O, about why I thought the LA Galaxy would win, because that was my prediction going into the weekend. And well, I told him, besides the fact that Inter Miami has these fitness issues and that their depth is a question, Phil Neville is inexperienced in this league, and Greg Vanney is the opposite. Very experienced in this league, has won an MLS Cup, taken his previous team to multiple MLS Cup finals. He knows how to manage in this league. He knows when to push the right buttons and what levers to pull when they need to be pulled, where Phil Neville will be figuring that out over the course of this season. So I think that's what we saw happen on Sunday. Greg Vanney said, hey, I'm making changes as soon as the 55th, 56th minute because he knows, he has experience. Phil Neville maybe got caught up in the moment with the game and maybe didn't take into consideration the important fact that his team was not at their peak fitness, and that proved costly. But
just put yourself, play Football Manager, put yourself in his shoes when if you're winning or you're competing in the game. Do you change it? Do you stick with it? That's why they get paid the big bucks, I guess.
Steve, we got one more question just snuck in right before we wrapped up the Q&A session. And it comes from Jorge Medina. What does Neville take away and need to adjust going forward after the first game, especially with 2 tough away matches coming up? Second question, if possible, is McCarthy to blame for the 2 goals scored by Chicharito? We just touched on Neville, so you can touch on the McCarthy one there a little bit more if you'd like.
I mean, look, yeah. On reflection, when he sits down and watches the replay of the second goal, yeah, he probably could have done better. Could have done nothing with the first goal, as I've lauded and waxed lyrical about the wonders of Chicharito. And again, the third one actually was also a great finish. It wasn't necessarily his fault. I think it was Matuidi that failed to actually clear the ball. They just didn't deal with it. You know, the first rule you're taught as a defender, if in doubt, you kick it into Rosette, kick the ball out into the stand, kick it to Miami, to Fort Lauderdale, wherever. And they didn't do that. And they got punished by 2 good finishes and just a sloppy one in sandwiched in between it. So, there were negatives and there were positives to take, and that's as simple as that.
Could you see a change at goalkeeper? Do you think he could go with Dylan Castañeda, or do you think it's too soon to put?
I don't know. He did okay. I mean, he did okay last season as well, didn't he? He's not. It wasn't. Remember, he was the new hero, wasn't he, when he came into the side? So, as we said, could have done better in the second. I don't think he was at fault for either of the other goals. I think it was what happened in front of him put pressure on his shoulders to then, whatever happened. So, I'd stick with him for the most part anyway. And then we got our friend coming in from Holland later on in the summer.
Nick Marsman. So to answer the question, I gave him the worst rating of all the players on Inter Miami in my player ratings piece. Gave a goal to Chicharito. Gifted a goal to Chicharito, the second one. The first one, that's the one I put least on him. I know there's been some criticism about the ball going through the 5-hole, through his legs, but that happens. The third goal, based on where he was positioned, maybe you'd like to see him dive there, but given how it was shot, and like I said earlier, the ball curled from the outside of the frame to the inside, kissed the post and goes in. Hard shot, but yeah, he probably should have made an attempt. Probably should have at least tried. But I don't think he had a great game. Now, what does Neville need to take away from this and move forward with? Like I said before, just he's going to have to gain experience, maybe get his players to mark up or mark a little bit tighter, even if they want to play counter-attacking soccer, because it just wasn't good enough in the second half against the LA Galaxy. But that does it for the Q&A session for this one. Steve, give us your final thoughts. I'll give mine, and then we'll wrap up this week's pod.
As I said, great. It was a great occasion. It was great to see the fans back in the stands, having a good time. Social distancing, fine. Okay, look, whatever happened. But on the whole, I think people are respectful of the rules. It looked good. It's just nice to see, smiles on people's faces walking to the stadium. It's such a great tonic in these sort of crazy, weird times. And I just think it's going to be exciting covering the team. It's never dull. There's goals at both ends, which is something they've got to work on. But it's entertainment wise, it's up there, and it's good value. So let's hope they can get a positive result on Saturday night, and then that just gives them a bedrock. I don't think we want to get into situations we were last season when they went 0-5, and then the pressure just builds and builds and builds, and I don't want that narrative. So let's hope for a positive result on Saturday, and then they can build for the games coming up.
I'll do a bittersweet final thought. Starting with
so negative.
Starting with Sunday. It was a fun event. It was a fun game. It was a fun day at the stadium. From a professional standpoint, being with you and the whole media squad, and we took a picture before and we put it out to social media, got a lot of funny and interesting remarks. But it was just a fun day. And on a personal note, not professional note, although the professional part was great too. Again, got to meet some fans, got some feedback on the work we do, and that was nice. But on a personal note, I was also able to see my family take in an MLS game in South Florida for the first time, which was awesome. They were so excited. I went to go see them before kickoff, and my mom was happy as can be. My stepdad as well. My brother was a little calmer, surprisingly, because he's the more hardcore fan, but it was just good to see them in that environment. They're soccer loving family. We're all soccer loving family members. So clearly, so it was just good to see that. It was good to see that, and I'm sure they had a lot of fun during the game, especially when the goals came in. My stepdad wasn't too happy about the final result. It definitely gave me an earful about what he thought went wrong in that second half. But awesome to see and awesome to spend some time with them in their seats before kickoff. Now, the sour part is that there's going to be some bad news for Inter Miami this week if MLS holds true to what Don Garber said. How bad will it be? We'll talk about that next week if it comes out, but it could be pretty bad, and that could be not maybe something that impacts the players, but that does influence the tone of things going into the weekend. And that, you don't want that hanging over your head, but it very well could be something that lingers into Saturday's road game against the Philadelphia Union. Steve, before we go, I don't think we made a prediction. Steve, give me a prediction for the weekend. Give me a result.
1-1.
1-1, draw?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm going to say, I like that. I like a draw. I think a draw. I'm not going to say loss. I'll say 2-2. 2-2 draw. We'll leave it there. That's all for now. We'll come back next week again. We'll try to come back on Monday night recording, Tuesday night episode. This week we had to do it a day later because of the game being on Sunday. But don't forget to follow us on all our social media channels and leave us a review, please, if you haven't already, on Apple Podcasts. It helps us out tremendously. For Steve Brenner, I am Franco Panizo. We will talk to you guys again next week.